I think most people want to follow the rules. We might not like all the rules all the time, but for the most part, we want to follow the rules. Society has rules. If you're driving and you get behind somebody slow and there's two double yellow lines, we cannot pass, right? When we have the broken white line, then we can pass by. We follow the rules. Red means stop, green means go. Society has rules. There are rules in the workplace. An honest day's pay for an honest day's work. Don't embezzle. Observe appropriate workplace boundaries with your coworkers. So society has rules, and the workplace has rules, and religion has rules. Naturally, the rules in religion are meant to lead us to a deeper relationship with God, a personal relationship with the Lord, but religion has rules. In the gospel today, we hear of a scholar of the law, of the Mosaic law, the Ten Commandments, the rules, a scholar of the rules asking Jesus, quizzing Jesus, what is the most important rule? And Jesus says, well, what do you think? And the scholar of the law says, love God and love your neighbor. Those are the two most important rules to follow. And Jesus says, you answered correctly, and then the scholar tries to test him again. Okay, well, who is my neighbor? And we get the very famous story of the Good Samaritan. It's important for you and I to know the background of this story in order to really understand the significance of what happened with the Good Samaritan. If you're familiar with the U.S. war between the states in the 1860s, otherwise known as the Civil War, it was divided between the Union in the north and the Confederacy in the south. You have a good idea of what was going on about 700 years before Jesus. In the Holy Lands, there was the north and the south. The south was, the capital city was Jerusalem, and the country was called Judah. Judah was the south. In the north was Samaria. And that's where we get the Samaritans from. So the country was divided between north and south. Samaria in the north and Judah in the south. Well, what happened was about 700 years before Jesus, a country conquered Samaria. The Assyrians. It's a lot of detail, but it's important. The Assyrians conquered Samaria, and what they did was they exiled all of the able-bodied, healthy Samaritans away from Samaria, and in their place they brought in people from 5 different nations, from 5 different other conquered nations, settled into Samaria. So living in Samaria, 700 years before Jesus, what you had were the Jewish people of Samaria, but the old, the sick, the crippled, the lame, the lepers, people that would not have been exiled. And then people from 5 other pagan countries that had their own customs, their own culture, their own gods that they worshiped. And so what happened was, in Samaria, you had this great mixture of cultures and religion. All the while, in the south, you had the pure religion of the one true God, the Mosaic law, the Jews. And so over the centuries, there was this animosity that was built up between the south and the north. The south, the people in Judah, felt that they were the pure religion. They were still following the Mosaic law. And they looked down on the Samaritans because now they were all mixed of different cultures and different religions that had displaced the one true religion. Are you following me? I'm sorry, this is important, though. This is important to understand the story of the Good Samaritan. So there was this animosity between the Samaritans and the Jews. And then we get this story of the Good Samaritan. Now we know the backstory. Now we know the significance. The story of the Good Samaritan in the days of Jesus would be like us listening to a story like this. There was a Confederate soldier who fell victim to robbers and beat up and lying on the side of the road. And along came a Union soldier and helped him. You see, that's putting it in terms that we would understand. There was a Catholic beat up on the side of the road, and along came an evangelical Protestant who came and helped him. There was a U.S. citizen beat up, lying on the side of the road, and along came a terrorist and helped him. Paid out of his own pocket, lifted him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, cared for him, and told the innkeeper, take care of him, and if you incur any further cost, I'll pay you on my way back. Do you see the significance of what happened now? Saying the Good Samaritan, you and I are accustomed to hearing that, but I'm not sure we all really realize the significance of what happened. The Samaritan helped the Jew. We know it was a Jew because he was going from Jerusalem to Jericho. Well, only the people from Judah, the Jews at that time, would have been traveling on that road like that. So that's the significance of the Samaritan. It's something that you just wouldn't expect. It's completely counterintuitive, countercultural, against everything you would expect. There's a U.S. citizen lying on the side of the road, beat up, and somebody you wouldn't expect came and helped him. So that's the backstory. Now here's the story. The whole point of this was the scholar of the Mosaic law, of the rules, asking Jesus, who is my neighbor? And Jesus says, this is who your neighbor is. Everybody. And then the zinger at the end, go and do likewise. Who would be lying on the side of the road that you and I would absolutely, positively not want to help? Might be a family member, might be a coworker, right? Might be somebody who's hurt us deeply. And the whole point of the story is go and do likewise. Because someday you and I might be that person on the side of the road. Sometimes we might be the Samaritan walking by. But either way, there's that bitter divide between the two. And even though there's that bitter divide between whoever is the Samaritan walking down the road and whoever's lying in the ditch, Jesus says, go and do likewise. Is there anybody who would be lying on the side of the road that you would look at and say, I can't do likewise? Is there anybody who, if you and I are lying on the side of the road, that we see walking by, please don't do likewise? But that, we have the backstory now. It was a long backstory. I'm sorry, but it was important for knowing the point of the story. And the point of the story is, go and do likewise.